Hi, Dr. Cousin.
Oh my gosh.
How
What have you put on my life by calling me a doctor?
Dr. Cousin?
So beautiful. How are you?
I am well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. Doing
Girl,
good.
thank you so much for doing this. I just got off the phone with our mother.
Right. How was
She,
she?
girl, just her same self. She's so funny. I'm
I
gonna
love her.
do this with her as well. So
Oh, good.
I'm excited. I know
One
you're
second.
super.
I think I lost you.
Say that
Hold on
again.
one second.
Yeah.
Hold on one second. I think I lost you. I don't know how. Okay, there we are. Okay. I
Right.
think we're good here. Let's see. Yep, we're good.
Yes.
Look
Okay.
at these questions.
You're just so cute, girl. Oh,
Oh, please. Look at you.
no,
Trade compliments all day long.
look, it's only on Sundays. It's only on Sundays.
It's only on Sundays.
um, I guess we're gonna play it by ear. We're gonna have some fun. We're gonna chit chat. Um,
Sure.
I think I'm just gonna start by doing just a small introduction. I'm gonna call you Dr. Cousin, allow you to introduce yourself to say whatever you want, and then
Okay.
just I don't know, go right in it.
Okay, sounds good.
All
So
right.
first of all, thank you so much for having me. I am of the opinion that anytime that we are talking about mental health, and especially Black mental health and wellness, that I don't care if it is one person on the side of the corner that I am speaking to, or it is a jam-packed auditorium, because it matters. And so I thank you so much for your heart and your vision, and all of the work that you've done just to get to this point, and then inviting me on to the show. So thank you, Shayna. I appreciate you so much.
The
This is really
Lord.
a blessing. I was just about to say the same thing too. Listen,
He's
listen,
like,
it,
girl,
it
be
is all
obedient.
him. Yep, please, please do. Please do. There's a reward in obedience, I tell you. There's a reward in obedience and sacrifice. But we ain't come to preach. We can do that another time, but we ain't come to preach. But I am Nakisha Randolph. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I normally do dress up, but I just got this hoodie on and I had to wear it. It says I don't know if you can see it, it says check on everybody.
Everybody.
We get this thing going, check on the strong person. Oh, you need to check on everybody. And so I just thought it was, fitting to wear it. But I love all things mental health, mental wellness. Currently, I work for federal government as a trauma recovery therapist in Orangeburg, South Carolina, and I absolutely love my job. I get to work with our nation's heroes and making sure that they are well after they have served us. I have the pleasure of serving all who served all. And besides that, I'm in private practice. I've been doing that for the last 3 or 4 years. Absolutely enjoy it. Being a licensed marriage and family therapist, I work with individuals too. So I know sometimes people are like, whoa,
Yeah.
we're not here for that. But I do work with individuals. My training just means that I just have advanced knowledge in how to work with families and systems and couples. So I see things from a very systemic point of view. Other than that, I am a wife to this really great guy named Devin. Don't tell him because he be acting up sometimes.
I'm snitching.
Other than that, yep. Other than that, listen, I am a child of God. I am just Nakisha Randolph, and again, I'm just really happy to be here. So thank you.
I am just so humbled to just know you and say that you're family. Like you're just so amazing. But more importantly, for all your accolades, it's just your spirit. You have a really calming presence. And so I really wanted to, you were talking about the things that you do for the men and women who serve us.
Mhm.
Let's talk about that, especially in combined with your dope hoodie, check on everyone.
Right.
especially with, I think, our brothers and sisters, and when I say brothers and sisters, I mean everyone, who might
Mhm.
feel like life has taken them for granted, used them and left them, and now it's like, now
Mhm.
what? Like, what kind of advice
Right.
do you see a lot of that? What kind of advice do you give
Mhm.
people?
Yeah, so as a trauma recovery therapist, I only work with vets with PTSD all day long, every day. PTSD. And for those of you who are not aware, PTSD just stands for post traumatic stress disorder. And post traumatic stress disorder, let me just say, does not happen just to veterans. Post traumatic stress disorder can happen to anyone who's experienced some sort of trauma, whether it's a little t trauma that we sometimes say, or a big T trauma. And trauma being that like a distressing situation that leaves someone feeling powerless or feeling as if they can't cope. So there are two different things. You get post-traumatic stress disorder and then the trauma that causes PTSD. And so with the veterans that I see, I see a lot of military sexual trauma, which means that they had an assault while a sexual assault while in the military, normally by a commanding officer or someone else. Doesn't necessarily have to be a commanding officer, but those are just the cases that I see. And then I see combat war veterans, so those who have served and may have, seen, someone or even a civilian in another country, like, blown into pieces or hit by, a car or something that was just really traumatic while they were on their tour. And sometimes I even just get vets who maybe did not experience either of the two, but had a really severe childhood,
Mm,
like most of where you know we see people with trauma that starts kind of in their childhood. And so I do two different therapies. I do one with couples who are affected by PTSD, which is called cognitive behavioral conjoint therapy. And then I do something that's called cognitive processing therapy, where we really look at the stuck points. And here's something that will help your viewers. We all have stuck points, that's related to a trauma. And a stuck point is an unhelpful or unwanted thought
mm,
that causes us not to be able to get on that other side of trauma.
mm,
It is a barrier. It is a blockade in our mind that we replay over and over and over again. Not necessarily the trauma itself, but the role and the responsibility that we played in the trauma. And so, even if I didn't do anything to deserve a predator to assault me, in my mind, my stuck point says, well, I was too weak, or maybe I was too naive, or maybe I should have said something, or maybe I should have done something. So the blame lies on you, and you can't get rid of that stuck point unless you learn to replace that thought with the truth and the evidence that one, it wasn't your fault. Like most people who commit sexual acts, and this is outside of just my job, it's not ever about sex, it's about power and control. And so we have to I help them to look and see what information are they missing. And two, is the evidence that you're saying in your stuck point really true? And if you are missing information, which means that it's not your fault, it was their fault, maybe they had their own trauma, number one. And two, if there's no truth to the stuck point that, oh, they preyed on me only because I was weak, then we got to let that stuck point go so that
mm.
you can get on with your life. Now, on the other side of trauma, I tell people all the time, yes, it is healing. And yes, there is recovery, but there is also pain. So for people who are like, oh, trauma growth on the other side, yes, there's growth too, but there's still a pain that's associated. So we have to be really delicate and empathetic with the people who we are helping, so to speak. So I know it was a long answer,
No,
but I kind of wanted to
I
judge
love
it
it.
all and
This
give it all in.
this is your space. Like, that was so informative. And when you let's talk about PTSD and
Mhm.
trauma and like Black women, because when you were talking about that, I was thinking, when I think about strong Black women, I realize that a lot of it is based on how they've handled trauma in their lives.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like a trauma badge. Like, sis, you went through
Right.
a lot of trauma and you did it
Right.
strong. And I
Right.
feel like it's very restrictive and it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
allow the weaker sides to be looked at as
Mm-hmm.
strength. Like, talk a little bit about
Right.
like what you see
Yeah.
in.
Yeah. So let me say this in general terms of Black women with PTSD. Number one, the numbers aren't, the data isn't as clean, and it's because we still have this thing about now we've gotten better at going to therapy. Like we have gotten better at going to therapy, but even sometimes when we are doing like surveys and people are trying to collect data on us, and I said it's clean. It's not clean. The data is dirty, is what I meant to say. The data is a little dirty because it doesn't give a clear indication of reported trauma. One, because we sometimes don't report it. So if my dad is raping me and has been raping me for years, who am I reporting that to?
Right.
We don't talk about that. We're not as a whole, because I know there are going to be some people like, oh no, people are coming forward. Yeah, they're coming forward, but they're not coming forward. They are, but they're not.
Especially
Okay,
in
so
communities, it's what happens in the house stays in the house. Like that
absolutely, yeah.
still goes on today.
Yeah, yeah. Because if you think about it, even when we think about kids in particular, I work in a rural community with or I used to work in the school district right before I started my new position, but it was predominantly Black BIPOC. So we try not to use the word minority anymore, because then that means that the majority is the majority, and we
Yeah.
don't want to give anybody any power. And so just by BIPOC, just like Black, Indigenous, people of color. And but what I saw in my schools were that if something did happen that was a traumatic experience that needed to be reported to child protective services, by the time CPS got to the school, the kid had already changed their story, because it was it was easier, which goes back, this is gonna all lead back to your question. It was easier for a kid to live with my mom or my dad, my uncle, my grandma abusing me, than thinking I'm going to go into a new foster situation or an emergency placement where I don't know how severe that abuse could be or what I'm getting myself into. At least I know what to expect at home versus if I'm, dragged out of my house and I go someplace else. But
It's the devil
back
you
to
know.
back to right, you never know. Yeah, exactly. And so back to Black women with PTSD, we have for such a long time had to negotiate who we were.
Mm.
We've had to negotiate who we were. So sometimes we don't even know that we are in a traumatic experience. We are living in a traumatic situation because I've had to negotiate being what I think is strong for what I'm going through or the adversity that I am facing. And those are kind of two really murky places to be. What I think I should be and me facing this adversity or this trauma. And so when we think about just women who are identifying like, okay, something is wrong, this isn't right. And so I do need to seek help, because I'm having nightmares. Some of the symptoms of PTSD are nightmares, like intrusive thoughts, which means, it could be anything like, thoughts that are like, invading your mind, kind of like the suck points that I talked about, hypervigilance, you are afraid of, what is behind you, or, somebody walks up on you, you're afraid you're not going to the same place as you would because that's where the event happened, or one major one is avoidance. And so what Black women not all Black women, so I'm saying this very general and very loosely, but what we've experienced is like one, that we've had to negotiate who we were, and then two, suppression. So, and in the midst of the negotiation of who we are and what we are going to play this day at this time for this person, and this sense of suppression is a loss of identity. We don't know who we are because, so let me give you a layer, a very thin surface layer of a negotiation and then the suppression. I go into a predominantly white work environment. Now, I've been to predominantly white schools all of my life. Not that they were private, but just like predominantly white schools. I have always been, and I say me, I'm just using as an example, but I've always been, my hair has always been a question. Why does your hair look like that? Why is your hair like coarse? Why does it feel like that? Why is it not soft? And so just the trauma of having to deal with questions and constant bullying and tormenting about my hair throughout, K through 12. And then I get into a workplace that reminds me or re-triggers of that trauma is like, wow, and now I am having to negotiate whether or not I wear my hair straight, or if I get a wig that's straight. Do I wear braids or do I wear it natural? Do I wear a puff? Do I get a relaxer? What do I do so that I have to fit in? And that's the negotiation in the mind that we have to deal with, you
And
know?
the submersion
And
of
then this,
identity. Like your hair is part of
absolutely,
your identity and you're shrinking it
absolutely.
just to fit
You
in.
Right, right. And then the other part of it is too the suppression part that I talked about. And the suppression happens when the strong in me says, no, wear your hair how it is, because your hair was not what got you the job. Your skill set was what got you the job. And they need you. You are an asset. So all of these thoughts, thoughts that are coming that are positive about trying to like overthrow and overturn the thought of, no, I need to worry about my hair because this reminds me of that. It does, bring up in question, yeah, the trauma is re-triggering, but in between these two things, this negotiation of this constant thought, and then the suppression of, okay, I'm just going to do it. I'm not going to listen to what my voice says and what wisdom says to me, is who am I?
Mm.
Who am I? Who am I? And have I become so uh ridden with trauma that I only see out of a trauma lens? Because that is possible. But again, the self, myself, how do I self-identify so that one, I can climb up just enough just to get help with what I've been experiencing, but then I can also be who I am. And a lot of that just comes with time and with therapy and with people helping. But it is unfortunate. I mean, but people experience these types of, our people, our women, our sisters experience these things all the time. Not that that is the perfect answer, but if you're asking me from a clinician what I see, that is what I see. So the data is a little dirty. They don't always self-report because it happens right here. And then people are going to think I'm crazy if I tell them that I'm in my mind. I'm like tossing around like the thought
I
of my hair
know.
or whatever.
It's like 10 million ideas going on at once just to get something as simple as how am I going to wear my hair today? Like it's
How am I going to wear my hair?
all
Because it
these,
matters. It
it does.
matters because, yeah, our white counterparts, they're not thinking about like, oh, I need to wear my hair straight or, whatever. I need to get my hair permed. Well, Black people get relaxers, right? They get perms and they're not, but that's just one small piece
Small
of
people.
the negotiation. It gets deeper when even when you're married, And especially if that is a trauma, it could be a trauma that relates to, your childhood, or what you saw your parents or your mom being abused by your dad, or vice versa, because, women can be the aggressors. But yeah, I mean, it gets the negotiation of who we are. And that's the part that hurts me. I've been there, done that, but that's the part that hurts me for us. That we every single day, I have to figure out what part of me, what manufactured part of me I'm going to show you. Because I can't show you the real me, because sometimes I don't know the real me.
Yeah.
It's been taken away, it's been violated, so.
So can we
Mhm.
talk a little bit about that? Because I thought you brought up really great, interesting points about finding oneself with if I'm
Mhm.
someone that's looking to discover who I am, like what advice would you give me, knowing that rediscovering yourself is like a lifetime process? Like we're
Right,
constantly.
right. We are constantly doing so. That's a really good question, Shayna, because we are always, number one, we should always be growing and developing. But for people who are like, I don't know who I am, I don't know such and such, I want to be who I am, but the church is going to condemn me if they find out who I really am. So I don't really want to say that I am LGBTQIA, those sorts of things, or my family might shun me. So I'm stuck. I'm stuck in a place where I don't know who I am. I would tell someone that where you are right now is where you start your journey. And the great thing about life is I don't have to wait until like a December 31st at 11:59 to decide that I'm going to start a journey of or a resolution to becoming, right? I can decide that right now. And a part of understanding um, who you are is understanding what you don't want, what I don't need. And so I would tell people that's the advice that I give. Like, believe it or not, yeah, it might take a lifetime. And I know Oprah has this thing. I remember in my psychology class, we talked about it like self actualization, where you actually come and you know who you are, and, kind of like how that takes a lifetime to be. But there is one of the therapies that I really like, and it talks about being able to reauthor your story. So, say for instance, you came from a really bad place, which is often why some people don't know who they are because of just their past history. But if you came from a really bad place, or if you're in your early 20s, just got out of college, you're looking for who you are, no matter what you've done, no matter what you've been, good or bad experiences, you can always reauthor and rewrite your story. So I know I am not encouraging anybody to lie and make up an alias, like catch me if you can. Like, I'm a different person every day. That's
Yeah.
not what I'm saying. But there is power. There's power for us. Years ago with in slavery, our ancestors, they may not have been able to write, but they were able to tell a story. And there's something in narration and narrative um, that is so powerful. So I would tell that person to reauthor your story. Like, what are the things that you don't like, that you don't need? But then also, let's talk about the things that you do like about yourself and that you do need. You are your longest living relationship. You are with yourself when you were born and when you die. So there has to be threads or pieces of you that you identify with. And let's start there. And so after we do that, then we can build upon something, but we got to have a foundation of something. And normally that's in what I don't need. And then these are things that I absolutely like about myself or I enjoy about life. Oftentimes when people do, come to me and they're like, this is what I need help with, I find that the reason why it's so hard for people to really know who they are is because they're trying to be someone else.
Yes.
They are trying to be like, a celebrity, or they're trying to be like their friends, or they're trying to be like what somebody else wants them to be. And at the core of you, we always know kind of what we want and who we love and what we want, to attract. But if I have to filter, get through all the filters that people have given me and I've allowed them to assign to my life, it then does become really hard to know who I am. But if someone ever comes, I'm like so appreciative of them because I'm like, I'm going to help you. I'm
Yeah.
going to help you to get out of where you are to where you need to be. But it first starts with those things that I said. And then it's okay to reauthor your story with you as the main character, with you as the hero, with you as the one saving your own life, with you as the one that's healed, with you as the one that's recovered, with you as the one who comes out on top. And if that's what you want, then I'm going to help you to get it. You can be successful. You can be successful. You can be successful. You can accomplish great things. But it just starts with you being open to receiving what God has for you or the universe or whatever you call it. I don't know who your views are. But then also recognizing that I can't be that other person. Like what you can do, Shayna, and what you're called to do, I can never do. I
Yeah.
can support you and vice versa. I can only be me.
Same.
So once I get past what everybody else wants and what everything else, whatever these people have put onto my life or assigned to me, then I can subscribe to my own joy. I can subscribe to my own peace because it belongs to me. And once I realize that I'm my longest living relationship and I deserve X, Y, and Z, that I can create healthy boundaries, that I'm good. My definition of a boundary is what you want from me and what I'm able to give you. I might have what you need. You might need to borrow $10. I might have that, but I got to create a boundary with you. So I might tell you no, because I know that's going to sacrifice something on my end. And so we can't sacrifice our peace. We can't sacrifice any of those things for anyone else. We have to stick to what we know. And what I know is that I'm going to be with me forever until
Yes.
I transition from this earth. And I got to work on me and I got to subscribe to the things that bring me joy and happiness in order for me to know who I am.
And also like learning to love oneself, and bringing
Mhm.
happiness and joy is something you create and you provide. So you have
Right.
to kind of get to know yourself. I absolutely love all of that. What
Hmm.
if I was someone that was interested in getting therapy, but none of my friends or family are really down with it?
Hmm.
What kind of steps would I take to try to find a therapist? And
Hmm.
do you share that with people so that they understand, like, I'm trying to get this healing? Like, what kind of
Hmm.
advice would you give someone like that?
Yeah, so I have a little different approach. I kind of feel like I'm a community therapist. I can be sitting at a bar just waiting on my food, and my town is so small, my city is so small, like people will just come up and talk to me. So I don't just do the hey, go to psychology today, which you can. I mean, if you just don't want the help, you can. But I tend to meet people where they are and say, because I can't see everybody. And then most of the people that I know here, it would be dual relationships, and that's unethical. And so what I do
You
is
can't
I'm like,
see
what? No. No.
All right.
I'm just like, what are you looking for? Tell me what you need. Tell me what you think you need. And I think I know someone that can help you. So here's the number. Let me Google it. Here we go. Or if sometimes I have to go on psychology today for them, I help them. Is what I don't want to do. And I told someone this morning, an attorney contacted me for just some information. And she said, oh, it's Sunday, it's the weekend. I'll get back to you on Monday. And I said, no. I said, I don't. I said, yeah, I mean, I filter out different, calls or whatever, text, but I never turn someone down because you just never know how close they are
Yeah.
to suicide. And I'm just going to say it to suicide. I'm not just talking about like they are just like They don't know because they're, something happened, or even the loss of life. I just, with those things, I'm like, okay, I need to help them, because I don't, if the only alternative is talking to me or taking your life, I need you to talk to me, and you're not an inconvenience to me. So I will help them to go through and find out kind of like what's going on. And if it's something really serious, and 'cause sometimes we don't know what's really, really serious, like what is sadness? What is depression? Am I sad? Am I depressed? What's going on?
I was gonna
Having these thoughts.
Yeah,
What's
I was gonna
that?
ask you that. Like, do you find that a lot of your patients, even in, again, particularly, like, I feel like our
Mhm.
Black community,
Yeah.
are do you find a lot of us are know what depression is, and like maybe suicidal thoughts? Do we re
Mm,
do we
yeah, I think that
help?
some people, I mean, I don't think that, we are a race that's lost to what certain things really mean, or that, we're not, necessarily reading. I think that, again, we have generationally experienced a lot of different things. That depression doesn't really look like depression, it looks like my life.
Yeah,
So if someone is asking, if I go up to somebody who I can tell is depressed, and, they may not give me like a textbook definition. They may not even say I'm sad. They might just say, oh, I've been working this job all day long, and I got to go home to my kids and then my husband, and I'm tired and I need a break. And, I couldn't, I used to do, walk with a walking group. I can't do that anymore. And on top of all of that, I lost somebody, and it's just so much going on. And I mean, oh my gosh, but, this is my life.
right,
That's their depression. That's their definition of maybe depression, maybe something more serious. And
right.
so sometimes, as I think as clinicians, we have to listen to people and understanding what they're going through, because they're not going to always articulate to me that they are depressed. Now they will say, I've had, I kind of had thoughts, that, I don't want to be here anymore. They might say something like that, so I think that people will uh definitely describe suicide without saying I am suicidal, because that is an automatic, boom, hell.
Label,
So, we're not, I live in a Bible Belt state, so they're not going to necessarily say that. But as far as depression is concerned, depression and sadness, they look so much alike. In about 2 weeks, if you've been sad for 2 weeks, then we can look at that with a good assessment. We can look at that as, being depression, or maybe, some sort of adjustment disorder, especially if something has happened. Depression is just a mood disorder. And so, it really just depends. But I don't think for the vast majority of our people, we're like, oh yeah, definitely we are depressed. Some people identify and say, yeah, I've been feeling differently since this happened. And so I have a loss of interest in this because of that. But then think about it. A lot of people who have taken their lives by suicide, even let's say for instance, Twitch celebrity, what we see that might be depression and struggles with mental illness looks like a happy go lucky guy who does TikToks that I followed. And I'm like, dang, like I can't even like do like the Cabbage Patch, that type of thing. And he's happy. Or a pastor that I just learned about, I think it was last year, who played was on like on a rec softball team. I mean, he was had a huge church, rec softball, and he and his family went to a softball game the night before. Next day, he took his life. So, what happens when suicide looks like happiness? Because it doesn't always look like I'm crying. I'm in my room. I'm eating chocolate ice cream because this guy left me. It doesn't always look like that, especially for us. Sometimes we just wear it well, but we are really struggling in the inside. And I think the percentage is like either it's like 3% or 11%. I might be wrong on both numbers, but there's a very small number of people, especially in our with our ethnicity, that actually leave suicide notes. So it's like, well, why did why did that? I don't understand. They were just so happy. Why did they take their life? I don't
Right.
get it. So you never really, you don't always know. And
Yeah.
that's the hard part for families.
How do we create spaces where um where we can make it comfortable for people? And I know, like, I'm
Hmm.
just asking you just your opinion. I know you're not
Hmm.
saving it all, but I think a lot
Yeah.
of times I remember riding around with someone really dear with me, and they were
Hmm.
just talking about their life, and it sounded like depression, and it
Hmm.
sounded like the type of person he was. It was like, no, we don't ever talk about this. Like, I'm a hood
Hmm.
street dude. We don't talk about
Hmm.
anything. But I'm like, this sounds like
Hmm.
depression and
Hmm.
suicide. And I remembered we just went around and I was looking for like therapists. I was like, I don't know how to help you.
Yeah.
Like, but he was just, I felt like even saying therapist for him was kind of weird. And it was like, that's
Hmm.
not my vibe. Like, how do we
Hmm.
get in those spaces where people can feel trust? Like, my mother always used to tell me, if you needed to talk to someone, don't talk to a friend, talk to a therapist, because legally they can
Right.
your business. So, like, are there things that you can
Hmm.
talk about as a therapist to, I don't know, if people are worried about like being, because a lot of times we go through things and the things that bother us the most, we feel like we can't talk to anyone about. How do
Right.
we get over that barrier?
Right, right. So the two questions that I heard in there was like, what do you do to create a safe space? And then how do we get over the barrier? And so the first thing I want to say is in creating a safe space is having podcasts like this.
Yeah.
Um, being the friend who's willing to drive around for a few hours with that friend and not leave them alone. That's a safe space because everybody's not going, like you said, everybody's not going to go to counseling right off the bat. But I know if you're safe enough, that I could just kind of process out my thoughts real, and then you can decide like if they're, oh, like I got a gun in my pocket and I intend to use it to take, kill myself. Of course you would take them to the hospital or something like that to get them help drive them there. But we have to be we have to be intentional about one, discussing our feelings and making it normalizing the fact that there are spaces that I can go to in therapy. And, I might get dinged for this, but I'm not always so huge on pastoral counseling, just in the sense of, unless, they are, you know, there's some different, ethical things that I tend to bump and, run into with that, but not with all pastors. But creating safe spaces, let's start with places that people occupy the most. So if they're occupying churches, or if they're on social media, or Shayna, if you have a gazillion followers, let's start in those areas, and bringing mental health professionals on who can come on in a hoodie and says, look, I don't know everything, and I'm not talking textbook or academia here, but I'm talking to your heart, and I want you to get the help that you need so that you can recover. And so again, a safe space can be any place that you create. And I agree with Auntie. Like, no, I don't always think that you should come to your friends because like when I used to work in the school district, I would have like seventh graders who were talking to others. Oh, my friend told me, girl, she is your same age. Like, at least get an eighth grader who got like a year more of experiences. And so
Yes.
sometimes those lines get a little blurry, but um, you know, overcoming the barrier is, I want my life more than I want this pain. And even if I can't see clearly, I know that there's more that's out there. And so I want my life more than I want this pain. I'm going to say this, and I promise I'm going to be quiet and let you ask all your questions. I read a book one time. I was reading a book one time and they had a story and it basically said this man had moved into a new neighborhood. And he realized that after he bought this house that his neighbor had a dog. And this dog would like, it would bark day in and day out. And so it went by for like a month. And so he went over to the neighbor's house. He was like, hey, they introduced themselves and said, your dog, I don't mean to like be disrespectful, but your dog continually barks day in and day out. Is there anything that you can do? Like, I don't want to have to like invest in, soundproof stuff for my house. And so he said, follow me in my backyard. And so they go in their backyard and he says to the guy, he says, well, there's my dog. And he's been sitting in that same spot for the last 3 months. Now, of course, we know this is not a true story, but it's getting somewhere. And so the man said, well, what is wrong? Like, just take him inside of the house. And he said, the door is right behind him. That door is always open. That my dog sat on a rusty nail, however long ago, and has decided not to get up. And that's why he is in pain. And so when we talk about barriers to, or breaking barriers to mental health and to the stigma of mental health, we have to ask ourselves, how much longer are we willing to be in pain? And the door to recovery is just right there. Now, I understand that some of us have experienced, and I don't compare tragedies. I don't compare, oh, your trauma is bigger than my trauma. There are some people who have been through some horrific things. So yes, it is going to take someone to help and uplift them. But when you are in a position where there's no one around you and your family is not supportive of you going to therapy or doing counseling or whatever you want to call it, or getting help, and you are sitting on a nail and the door is open, and figuratively, it might take you a lot longer to get to that door, but there's somebody willing to walk through life to help you with the coping skills, to help you with the skills that are needed to really fully get on with your life and deal with the things that you need, then that kind of comes back on you. How long are you going to sit there when you can get up and get the help that is absolutely necessary?
Honestly, that whole phrase right there is just so amazing because I think it goes back to what you were saying about just changing your perspective of how you see things. And I think sometimes we as in people get caught up in the trauma of it, and that we can't do anything about what was done, but we can do something about how long
Come
the
on.
pain stays and
Come
lasts.
on.
And
Come
like,
on.
we can honestly, again, going back to choosing to be our own narrators of our lives, like, I can choose to be a survivor of this thing. I can choose
Right.
to
Come
use
on.
this thing as a lesson. And hopefully, by me overcoming this trauma, I can pull up at least someone else out of it. Because I just, I think that's what this podcast and this conversation really is about. It's not to say we're two women who've been through things individually,
Absolutely.
but
Yeah.
we found the way to heal, glory be to God. And now
Yeah.
it's just like, well, I'm in a place where I'm happy now, and I'm smiling and the rainbow is out, but I can't help but to think about me before, and I would
Right.
want someone to come back to come get me. And so
Absolutely.
we're just
Absolutely.
reaching out, and I really just appreciate everything you do, because
Sure.
being the gatekeeper of so much trauma can be in itself a thing. And the way you just carry it with grace in class, like, I just want to applaud you and just thank what God has put in you. Amen. What God has put in you to do this. Because these are conversations that we do need to talk about.
Yeah.
And no disrespect, but I think our generation to also
Yeah.
chime in and say things, because there's just things that maybe Big Mama, she might not have went through, like I love her, but
Right,
that won't
right,
be
right,
either. And so
right.
I just think as the next generation of women, people in general, we got to reach back and help others. So thank you
Absolutely.
so much for this.
You're welcome.
I just love you. And I know we're going to be talking more about this. Okay. Like this
Absolutely. Please.
unofficial,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
therapy sessions.
Right. I'm gonna bill you, Shane. I'm gonna bill that insurance.
I'll be like, bill it to my mom.
No, but you listen, but you continue to do what you are doing. I think ministry looks a lot different for a lot of people.
Yes.
And I think this is ministry for you. And I want you to keep on going. I don't care if one day when this plays, you got 2 people who are listening or 30,000 who are listening. You keep on going, and then after you keep on going, you keep on going. Like you don't stop. You continue
Yes.
to build upon what this is. And then, because I know that this is healing for you too. And it's healing for me too to be able to talk about it in a way that is normalized with another Black woman. Like you said, my sister, you are like my sister. We are, if people don't know, I'm seriously like, we were like, we're sisters. And I don't know why this thing is happening with my little camera here, but yeah, so I appreciate you, and we can sit here and we can trade compliments
I
all
can
day long, but
literally monopolize on your time all day long. Girl, you be like,
I
stop
appreciate you.
texting me.
Right, right, right. But
But
I
I
love you, and I want you to this work is important that you're doing, and don't ever let anyone tell you that it is not.
same, sis, same. I love you.
Thank you.
Have a
I
good
love
night.
you. You too. Bye. Take care. Oh, one thing, please.
Yes.
I have to say this really quickly. If there is anyone listening to this podcast and you are in crisis or feeling suicidal, all you have to do is dial 988. There are crisis counselors that are 24 hours a day, 7 days a week that will help you. 988. That's all you have to dial. 988. And someone will pick up the phone. For veterans, I think you press number 1, but and they also have a Spanish option too, for anyone who's Spanish speaking, but 988, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And then what they will do after they're done, like counseling you is, depending on where you are, because some of them might say you need to go to the emergency room. Let's give me your location so I can send you to someone, but they will help you to connect you with local resources that are in your area. 988. That's the new crisis and suicide prevention lifeline number. So I had to throw
9-8.
that in there. That's like my little altar call. Like, come on up. That's it.
Yes.
988. That's 988. So
Good. So people 988. Thank you.
you're welcome. You're welcome. Take care. Bye bye.